Okay, good morning, everybody. So I think I'll start now while we've got everybody joining on for the session for the webinar on Fan Selector. Nice to meet you all. I'm Dan Loosely, President for Woods Air Movement USA. I'm going to do a very quick introduction to the company, and then I'll hand over to Paul Rose, our software manager for the new fan selection tool, who will run through all the details and functionality of the product and show you how to select the new ranges. So just for those who don't know Woods, I'll just do the quick company introduction. So Woods Air Movement, so we manufacture axial flow fans, so from specialized and bespoke products to off-the-shelf selectable ranges, and we take a lot of pride on working with our clients and our customers to select optimized performance, whether that's noise, airflow, power, or efficiency. We work with our clients to find the best solution for your application. So just a little bit about the history. So Woods Air Movement was founded in 1909 in Colchester in the UK, started manufacturing electric motors. In 1947, Woods Air Movement was the first inventor of the aerofoil axial blade technology, which is when we started to position ourselves in axial fan technology and as a market leader in air movement technology. In 1986 was when Woods first entered the US market. So we acquired American Fan Company, who some of you might be familiar with. And from 1986, they were selling the Woods product and the JM Axial ranges into the US market. Following from there, the company went through several acquisitions and mergers. So it was merged with Flact and became Flact Woods, which is an air treatment company merged with the air movement side. And then in 2013, the American Fan part of our business was sold off, which was when Woods lost its presence within the US market. And it's now very exciting times for us as we're opening the new plant in Tennessee, which I'll go through in a bit more detail. So our footprint as a company for Woods Air Movement, so we have our head office in Colchester, United Kingdom, and then we have production sites in the UK, USA, India, and Singapore, with 70 distributors internationally spread globally over the world. So this is a look at some of our products and the applications that we specialize in and focus on. So Woods positions itself as being the application expert in the market segments that we choose to compete in. So for us, jet fans, you can see there road type tunnels, longitudinal tunnels. Then we've got station extract systems. So this could be heat removal or smoke extract for life safety systems. So providing safe exit passage for customers or for people within train stations. Then we've got garage type application fans. So these will be mounted for pollution control or for controlling smoke, again, providing smoke clearance and safe exit for people within garage applications, and staircase pressurization systems. So then it brings us on to Tennessee. So I relocated last year from our headquarters in the UK. When I arrived in May, the new factory was a concrete slab. We're now very excited that factory's built, assembly lines are being set up, and now very busy recruiting the team locally. So the new facility is 25,000 square foot, has dedicated large fan and small fan assembly lines, and we'll be doing up to about 10 foot in diameter assembly in this facility. And we have an on-site research and development testing facility, which is now AMCA accredited. We've already had first customer witness tests completed going through the facility. And then just a quick overview of the products that we'll be assembling, manufacturing locally for the North American market. So we've got non-residential products. So this is our new USA axial range, which has the NEMA motors, garage type fans for pollution control, tunnel and metro systems. So this would be jet fans and also large tunnel extract fans, and then OEM products. And then here at the bottom, you just see an overview of our testing capabilities locally. So within the new facility, we've got an on-site research and development lab that will do the aero testing, thrust testing, acoustics, vibration and overspeed. And we're currently looking to develop the plant into high temperature and thrust testing moving forward. So I just wanted to jump in at the beginning, really, just to give a very quick overview of Woods and some of the activity that we've been doing locally. But for the main event today, I'll hand over to Paul Rose, who's our selection manager, who will run through the new fan selection tool with you. So I think, Paul, I don't know if you want to take over the screen.
Thank you very much. So I'm hoping now you can see my screen and not Dan's.
Yeah, so we were just going to say on microphones, if you wouldn't mind keeping them muted for the session, and if you've got any questions, if you could put them in chat, and then we'll run through questions at the end of the session or try answer them as we go along. Brilliant.
Okay,
thanks, Paul.
So my role in the business is a selection tool manager. Fan Selector is one of the selection tools that I look after in terms of both the development and support. So what we're going to do today, it's a very simple thing, and again, you'll be pleased to hear this is not death by PowerPoint, so I've only got a few slides here. It's just basically giving you an overview of the key essentials of how to use the software. And I'll just start with a couple of outlines in terms of how we want to actually run this. Now, this is something you can do at the same time as me doing the presentation. The website's live. So the way I'm going to do this basically is I'm going to guide you through a series of selections, show you how to use the program, how you can make your selection save into a project, and just basically how you can manage the information that you can see within the program for the products that we have available. So the way that I've done this in the past is we can, if we like, use the chat system throughout the presentation. This is the text facility in Teams. But in terms of microphones, as Dan says, if we can leave them off until the very end, it just helps the flow of the presentation so we don't get interrupted. Now, Dan's going to be with us throughout, so any texts that you enter or chat that you enter, he might be able to answer there and then. If he can't, or it's something that I need to demonstrate, given time at the end, I'll go through those questions and I'll try my best to answer them and also demonstrate anything that you've asked to see. So the whole point really of today is using the software. So you'll be pleased to hear this is near the end of the PowerPoint. So the first thing is, where is it? It's a web-based application. It's actually replacing an old desktop program we had, which has been around now for 16, 17 years. So this is the first full online version we've ever had. And it's located as part of the corporate website under woodsairmovement.com, but it is actually hosted on its own URL. And the URL for the Selector, if you want to bookmark it, which I'll show you in a minute how to do that, is fanselector.woodsairmovement.com. So that's just a very quick way of going straight to the selection tool. So what I would recommend that we do is bookmark that, which I'll go through in a minute when I've just turned this PowerPoint off. And anybody who has used our old selection software, which many of you probably haven't, if you have and had a user, we are starting again from scratch with this new version. So you'll need to sign up for the first time. So all new accounts will need to be created for the first time. And again, I'll show you that process in terms of what you need to enter to start to be able to select products. So that's enough of PowerPoint. Let's close all that down. Let's get into the program itself. So the first thing I mentioned there was about bookmarks. So there's different ways you can do this. In this demonstration, I'm going to do everything in Chrome. The program will work in different browsers. It's your choice, whether you use Edge, Firefox, or whatever you like. The different browsers have different ways of doing bookmarks. I'll demonstrate this to start off with in Google, but they're all similar. So the way that I tend to do it is under the Google ... You can see the bookmark section. And the reason I'm showing you this is by default, I don't know why they do this, but Google turns off the bookmark bar by default. But if you turn it on, what you can then do basically is you can add bookmarks, as you can see across the top here that I've got here. And it just allows you a very quick way to very quickly access the website at a push of a button. Edge is very similar, it's just worded differently. I think that does show bookmarks by default, but as I said, for some reason, Google turns this off by default. So I've already created mine, but basically if you go to the website, so if I just use my shortcut, when you're on the website, fanselector.woodsairmovement.com, you can just very quickly either use the star here, or you can go to the bookmark menu again, add the bookmark, and then give it an appropriate name. And then it's basically there as a shortcut to go to quickly. So I've just called mine here Woods Air Movement Selector. What you can also do, which I'd recommend, is on the desktop, you can create a shortcut. And if you create a shortcut and type in that website address, fanselector.woodsairmovement.com, go next, you can give it a name again. Finish. Now, my default browser on this PC is actually Edge, so that's why the icon is that. But basically, if I double click that, it will load up Edge in this case now and go to that website. This is quite handy compared to a bookmark because you can actually put it down the bottom as a Windows link, and also you can put it into some of the tiles if you like the tile shortcuts. So personally, I'd recommend you do it this way because that gives you a quick Windows-based shortcut to that particular website. I'll just get rid of that because I don't want to put Flash on my desktop. Go back to here. So a couple of things to mention. This is part of a website. If I go back to the corporate website is woodsairmovement.com. There are different versions. The version you'll be using by default is the United States version. And in the website, across the top here, you have this link to products. And in products, you have this link to Fan Selector. It's also lower down on the page here, product selection. This is basically a link or shortcut to that website I was just in. So whether you go to the website itself or that URL, you will get to the Fan Selector. So I'll just go to it in here now while I'm here, Fan Selector. And what you see here now is a view of the products that are suitable for the American market. So the way the site is laid out, you don't have to log in to use it. So when you use the software, having not logged in, it knows where you are in the world and gives you the view of the products that are suitable to where you are. So I'm currently using the American view. So I'm looking at the American product portfolio. If you're not logged in, you can do everything the same as a logged in user, except two critical things. You can't see prices and you can't save any selections in a project. There's a few other smaller options and settings, but they're the two big differences. So you can make selections, you can find products, you just can't see prices, and you can't see any save selections. So I already have an account, so I can log straight in. If this is the first time you're going to use the software, if I go to the right-hand side at the top here under login, I will need to register. Now, first thing to mention here, this is a sign-up process for all of the flat group tools, of which Woods is a member of that group. So when I create an account here, I'm not actually just signing up to the Fan Selector, I'm actually creating an account for all the other programs that we have. Now, I've already got an account, so I can just log in. If you don't, you can see down here, you have this sign up now process. So when you sign up, you have to do two things. You need to fill in your email address. That will then send an authentication code to that email, which you then enter the code back in the registration process. You fill in, I think it's 3 or 4 pieces of information. I think the company name, your job function, and where you are as a country, and that's it. And that's basically your account created. And then basically once that's created, you can log straight in. And again, I've got mine set up already. Just log in, sign in. And then the screen looks pretty much the same as before. There's a few differences, but now I'm logged in, I can see these prices that I mentioned, and I can also access and save my fans in a project. So just look at the screen visually. So the top menu here is actually part of the website. So this is where you've got all the links to the products, you've got all the contact information, news feeds, downloads and documents. That's the corporate website. Below that, you actually have navigation, which is the selection program. And I would strongly recommend it's this way that you use the program to find product, rather than keep going up here to this product section at the top. So this menu above this gray bar is the area that I would refer to as the fan selection navigation, of which we can see we've got 4 options. We have homepage, which is what we're looking at now. Projects, which is where all my saved projects are located, which we'll look at later on. And 2 selection modes. We have select products and direct mode, which is more of a configuration. I'll be showing you both those. I will be starting now with the selection of products. And directly beneath this menu, we have this grey bar. Now, when I wasn't logged in, it didn't have all this information, because this is now one of the features of being logged in and having an account is, one, I can see a price list, and two, I can see a catalog that has default products. Now, you won't be able to change these. The reason I can is I've got an admin account. So what you'll basically see in your version is your country, and both these two stated as plain text. And the difference that you can see very subtly from the non-logged in version to logged in is on the left-hand side. Now I've got something called My Project, which is minimized by default on the home page. If I just press this arrow, you can see here, this is empty at the moment because we haven't started to create one yet, but this is where all my selections will be saved. This is my project tree, and this is always active. So once you've logged in, My Project follows you around everywhere in the program and is always active. Again, you will see that in use as we go through and make selections. Just minimize that. And the way that the program's been laid out, it's basically on the front page here in 3 sections. We have some news and information. In the middle, we have all the fan groups, both split by application and also by product family. And on the right-hand side, we've got an area where we're going to try and use this to convey new features or things we've added to the program. So basically, left-hand side is corporate information and news. Right-hand side is information relating to the program itself. And the middle is just basically a shortcut to the various different product families and applications that we have our products grouped in. So I'm just going to show you one thing first, because it's quite unique to what we've done. We have this facility here to locate competitor products. Now, at the moment, there's nothing in here for America. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is it can be quite useful. So what we've set up in the background is a find our product equivalent of a competitor. So if you have in America certain actual companies that we're competing against, and they have certain product types or product lines, if you let us know what those products are, we can add them to our database, and very quickly you could search for them, and then you can find our equivalent products of their product codes. So I've just typed in AX here, and you can see here we found products from New Air, System Air, Navenco. They're all fan manufacturers across Europe and the world. Again, if you want to use this facility, if you can give us information on any products you have in America that are from competitors, we can add them, and then you can look them up. This, to my knowledge, is quite unique to us. I don't know of any other program that does this. It's quite a unique, powerful thing to very quickly find our equivalent product of somebody else's. Okay, so let's get into the main thrust of today, which is actually using the program to find product. So as I said, I'm going to do all my selections via this top menu bar here. And I'm going to start by looking at the selection mode to find a product using an aerodynamic performance or requirement. And then at the end, we'll go through direct mode, and I'll show you the difference in terms of how those products are found and configured and located. So let's start in select mode. So when you go into select mode, you see the same groups that were on the front page. You see here we've got the applications and product lines. The benefit of this top menu, though, compared to this menu here, is that when you're in this view, you can see all the products that sit in this particular group. So these are axial fans. And within these product lines and groups, you basically have a default product. So in America, that's the JM Aerofoil USA. And any product that you pick or highlight here gives you a little information card on the right-hand side, which just gives you some information about the maximum capability and range of that particular product. It gives you a little description here as well about what the product is. So if you're not familiar with our products, you can have a quick read and you can see the differences in terms of their purpose and their benefit. So for today's demonstration, we're very much going to focus on the JM Aerofoil USA. And then 2 things to be aware of once you're in this mode. You can select products in 2 different ways in the selection mode. You can select a product uniquely by this product line, so JM Aerofoil, by using these orange buttons. Or if you don't know the product you want, but you know a certain performance you're after, I could use the blue button here, select all, which will basically broker a search across everything and try and find any product that matches what I'm after. So the red or orange buttons are for a selected product. The blue buttons are for everything, basically. So I know in this example, I'm going to want a JM Aerofoil USA. So I'm going to go into this and demonstrate the selection mode using these orange buttons against this product card. So I just go select. Now this is taking me now into the selection program itself. So now the screen's changed and we've got a few more things now visible. So first of all, the project's popped out because it now knows that I'm making selections, so I'm going to want to work with the project. Now, when you come to use this, there's a couple of things that, depending on what you're using it on, in terms of the program or the screen size, you might find sometimes the screen real estate is a bit tight. So personally, I would recommend that when you're doing this, just minimize the project. It just means you get a bit more screen real estate and it stops some of the text wrapping around and just makes the presentation a bit nicer. If you're lucky enough to have a big screen or an ultra wide or something like that monitor, then go for it. You can leave everything expanded, but just bear in mind that obviously the more you show, the less space you have to actually work with on the main screen. So I'm going to minimize this just to get a bit more space. So what have we got now? We've got the gold, grey bar still, but now we've gained all these extra options at the top here. They're all greyed out. I can't press anything at the moment. And on the right hand side here, I've also got some other things in this darker grey area, which is also greyed out. And that's because at the moment we've not selected or chosen any product. These will become active once we start to actually find products and interact with some selection results. So let's start by making a very simple, basic, generic selection, and let's just find something 4,500 CFM at 2 inches water gauge. I press the orange select button, let the program go through, find all the products that can find that particular duty. Just scroll down here. Scroll the page down, you can see how I found 16 fans, if you can just about read that on your preview. So it's found 16 fans, but which one do I go for? So what the program does, it gives you a results grid. So this grid here, you can see here, I've got quite a few columns in view. This is fully configurable, which we'll look at later. So you can define which columns you want and what order they appear in the grid. So please forgive my layout. This is how I'm currently using it for demonstrations and tests. But what you have here is 16 products that can actually meet our requirement of 4,500 at 2. But which one do I want? Hard to tell. So what we've done is we've highlighted in yellow some of the best values for some of the categories that we're displaying. So any of the commercial people amongst you will notice the first column I have is price. And this one here is the cheapest fan. Not an uncommon way to sort of start. This is the cheapest fan, but over here we can see this one's more efficient. This one's quieter, and so on and so forth. So because the program doesn't know what you want and what's right for the application you're working with, it basically says, well, we've got all these options here. Go and pick one. So basically, it's your choice to interpret what looks good or bad or is right for your particular application that you're working with. So to help you, what we can do over and above the highlighting, we can put a simple filter in. So if cost is my motive, I can look at looking at the cheapest fans. So if I press this column here, I can reorder the grid, and now you can see all the fans are now in price order. So you can see here, this fan below it is $4 more. And it has a different size and different characteristics. So what I can now do is I can start to use this grid now to sort of filter and sort what I'm looking at to help me best decide what looks good. What we also do, you can see here on the left-hand side, we show you a small thumbnail of the fan chart. Now, today I can't go through and give you knowledge of fan engineering and fan expertise, but as a rule of thumb, basically you want to be aiming for a selection point that's somewhere in the middle of the chart. So you can see here these top two. This top one's on the left. This one below is nearer the middle. It's a bit small, so if I press it, I can just basically see a slightly enlarged view. If I press the one below, you can see an enlarged view. So this one looks visibly a better selection, but it's still a bit hard for me to judge. So you can see here, I've highlighted one now. It's gone grey and it's got a tick in the box here. If I tick the one above as well, I've now got two highlighted. I've got this compare option up here. That wasn't there before. So if I only have one picked, it's not there. If I pick more than one, I have compare. So when you're looking at products like this and you're not familiar with our product lines and their capabilities, what you can do is basically highlight more than one product, press compare, and then basically you can see some key properties that relate then to information that you can make an assessment against. So I actually picked the cheapest 2 fans. So what's the difference? Well, they're the same lead time. One's smaller than the other, fair enough. One's cheaper to run, so it has a lower running cost. But you can see here, this one's more efficient, it's quieter. So for $4, it depends what you're after. Are you after something that's the cheapest, quietest, most efficient? So what we're trying to do is give you views to make a calculated assessment of what product is right for you for the particular application you're working with. So if I just untick that. This one down here looks for me a fairly good selection. I'm on a good part of the curve. But I still can't see all the information, albeit my grid has now got, what, 20 or so columns here. I can't see all the technical information for this fan. So when you only have one product picked, you can see across the top here, I have all these options that are now active. These are grayed out before. So if you just go through one of these each at a time, you can see what's in them. These are allowing you to see more detail of this particular product that I have highlighted. So we look at the summary page first. So the summary page is basically all the technical calculations that were made when this product was chosen. So on the left-hand side here, you have all the fan performances based on the aerodynamic performance, the motor criteria, and the running costs and any environmental conditions that we had defined. Again, I did all this with defaults. We'll make some changes later on for some of this. At the bottom, we have the dimensions. On the right-hand side, then we have some mechanical properties, the fan performance chart, which shows you the duty in relation to the fan range and capability, based on all the different pitch angles that we can offer for this fan. Underneath that, you have the sound data, and beneath that, you have all the commercial data, where you'd see the fan and accessories. Now, at the moment, I haven't picked accessories. Again, we'll come back and do that in a minute. But everything down here gets listed, and then you get a total price for the package of the fan and the accessories together. So that's the summary page. The chart is basically a bigger view of the chart, but in here you can see the aerodynamic performance. This is the volume and pressure chart. You can also see the power chart and also the efficiency chart. So you can see how you're operating on these different angles. Depending where you are in the angle, you can see you have different power characteristics and you have different performance and efficiencies based on where you're operating. These are minimized by default. Now, I won't go through all these, but you can tailor and adjust how the chart is presented. So I know that some of our competitors don't show all the pitch angles on some of their actual products. They only show the active angle. In this case, ours is 16 degrees here. So what you can do is you can use this chart options on the left-hand side to basically change how this chart is presented and looks. Now, I'm not going to go through all these because there's quite a few in here, but I'll just show you the principle. So you saw on the thumbnail in the grid that I had some colors, where I had some circles. These are actually the efficiency contours. If I turn them on just by ticking this and press apply, let's get that minimized. You can see here, these represent the efficiencies of the fan. And obviously this bullseye in the middle here is the most efficient operating point. So if I wanted to show this on the technical output and the printout for this particular fan, I can basically turn it on using these options. And then this then will be the view that I present on the output. So if I go back to the summary page, you can see that change. You can see now it's been filled in. So the chart options are a way for you to tailor how you want to represent your particular selection. So you can turn on or off angles. You can basically hide or display different pieces of information. And all you basically do is choose something and then just apply it, and then the chart changes. As I said, I'm not going to go through all of them in here. You can play around with that. Product dimensions is where you have the overall dimensions of the product. And if I picked any, also the accessories, which I haven't at the moment, the accessories appear underneath. The accessories are the accessories that I can choose for this particular fan. In this case, this is a 45 JMA. There we go. And these are the accessories that we currently have available to be chosen for this particular product. I will come back to this in a minute. So at the moment, I'm going to leave this with no accessories because I'd rather do the accessories as part of the selection rather than choosing accessories for one particular fan. So acoustics is just basically a summary of the sound spectrum grid where you've got the inlet, outlet and breakout for the case. And documents are basically a link to brochures and catalogs that we have for these particular product types. So it's basically a PDF file that's currently on our corporate website. So all of the fans that you have, if I go back to the results grid here, any of these fans that I highlight will have details under those tabs at the top. And as you can see here, it gives you more information than you can see in the grid. So when you're choosing a product, you're looking really at two things: a quick summary in the grid, and then once you've found something that looks good, a quick review in here to make sure everything looks suitable. And then when you're happy with something, you might want to save this because you want to keep it. So I'm going to go back now to my project, which I minimized earlier on. So my project here has been off. Now you can load up an existing project, which we'll show you in a minute, or we can create a brand new one. So we can start to save what we're doing. So as we've now just started, I'm going to create a brand new project, and I'm going to start to add to that project these selections that we're now making. So I'm going to go create new project. I'm going to call this USA Tuesday. Use big S, big A. You can fill in more details, but this is enough just to get the project created. So I create it. You can now see we've lost the new option, and now you see the USA Tuesday is now our project name, but there's nothing in it at the moment. There's no products at all. It's just basically an empty tree. So what I can do is I can basically add this fan to this project because this is the one that I want in this example. But before I do that, I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to call this fan 1, and this will make sense why I'm doing this. If I just reselect that. Typically, when you're making selections, you tend to have like schedules, a building schedule or a design where you're selecting multiple products against a customer reference, and those fans typically are labeled, extract fan 1, supply fan 2, etc. So it's easier that if you have a fan reference or a designation, to specify it as part of your duty selection. So when you enter the volume and the pressure, I would strongly recommend, if you have a label, an ID, or a reference of the fan that you're selecting, and also the quantity comes to that, fill it in first, so that when you find the fan that you want, this is the one that we were looking at earlier, and add it to the project using the add to project option, it automatically puts the label here, fan 1, in front of the fan for you. Now that sounds a bit silly why I'm labeling that, but it makes it easier then to not have to go back to the project and then say, okay, now I need to rename it. I'm going to call this XYZ, because it's just more steps and processes. You can do it afterwards, it's not a problem, as you can see, but it's easier to define it here so it comes through as part of the process of saving it to the project. Now, what I just did there very quickly is right click and show you some options. I'll come back to these in a minute, but you can see that you can modify what's in the project once you've added something. So if you have forgotten to do this, it's not a problem. You can go and add it afterwards. You can also change the quantity. But it's just easier in terms of your less number of clicks to do it as part of the actual selection process. So that's what we've currently selected. So the results grid will always be here until I either press the reset button, which basically takes away all my input values that I've entered to date, or I change some of the options. So my 4,500 at 2 is just basically using all the default settings. I've basically let the program just basically give me any product that's using all the default values that are currently predefined. So it's worth now just having a quick look at some of the options we have and the impact they have on the selection when you remake it. So let's go through these one at a time. So I go into the options panel. Now this top one here is a bit of a miscellaneous group of different things in one area. So in here we have all the options relating to, is the fan horizontal or vertical? You can define, for example, how far you want your noise calculation to be defined in terms of distance. Mine's currently 10 feet as a default. You can define whether the fans are going to be displayed either under or over performing, or as I've got here, both. So it's a way of tailoring the options that get presented in terms of the results that come back. Electrical and motor is where you have details relating to the electrical details of the motor inside the fan. Now for the JM USA, there's not that many options, so most of these are pretty static. The ones that you might change is things like peak power and shaft power. Now I can't go too much in detail here, but basically when you size a motor, the motor is sized at the maximum power draw the fan would ever ask for, basically. If you do a shaft power selection, it gives you a motor size at the duty point that the fan is actually operating at, which in theory sometimes can give you a smaller motor. The default that we have though is basically peak. The other options in here for this particular product are pretty standard. If I were to make a change, say for example you had a product that was, I don't know, single phase, for example, you could have picked single phase and it would then have changed the settings to give you the different motors for that single phase option. For JMO or USA, that option is not there at the moment. Speed control, which I'll actually do while we're here. So I'm going to add a speed control on to this. Let's do an inverter. So now I've chosen inverter, that the screen's changed. We've got different modes of operating. So I'm going to leave this as default, which is basically trying to find a performance at the speed that I ask for. And there's two different modes that we can do a speed control selection of a fan. We can either use a fixed system constant, which is where the fan is installed in, say, ductwork and nothing changes, or we can do, which is the default, a selection against a number of different volumes and pressures based on a different criteria that the fan's operating to. If someone opens a damper, for example, or has different, like a day or nighttime operation where the system changes. In here, you can specify multiple different volumes and pressures. So let's just, as an example, do something like 3000 at, say, 2. I'm going to label these, and you'll see why in a minute, A and B. Before I go through the rest, I'm going to reselect that now, just to show you what happens. We'll go through the other options in a minute. Just reselect that. So, same number of selections as before, but what's different now is we have this little plus symbol appearing. And the plus symbol is because I asked for a speed control, and the speed controller I asked for was an inverter. So if I press this plus button, you can see now it's actually added the inverter in for me with a particular rating. So this little plus symbol indicates that this fan now has accessories associated to it. In this case, an inverter. You can see also the chart has changed. You can see now my chart has now got 2 lines showing on it. So this is the same fan we picked before. If I just press that again, and let's have a look at the charts, see what's happened. No, it's not charts. There's some replace what's happened. You've got A and B, which are the 2 different performances that I entered. So in here, you've got the different performances at the high and low speeds that I actually asked for. And then the all duties basically shows you the 2 different performances side by side. You can see here the differences in relation to the different running speeds. And in this case here, you can see one's been slowed down a bit, 59 Hertz. The other one's been slowed down a lot to 48 Hertz. So what the fan selector has done is basically using the inverter, said that I can either speed up or slow down this fan to achieve the 2 different performances that I asked for. And I asked for, in this example, performance A and performance B. So that just allows you to see the technical calculation of those 2 different values. You can see here the 3000 at 2. You can see here the 4000 at 2. Visually, you can see here that the 2 different performances in the chart. So I'll leave that on and I'll carry on with my options. So environment and temperature. This is where you can specify whether the fan is maybe designed for fire safety. So the default is non-smoke venting. If I wanted it for a higher temperature category, I could choose one of these 2 different temperatures. And this is where the fan performance then be adjusted to allow for that temperature compensation and allow the fan to be designed and built to suitable for that particular temperature category. You can also change things like altitude and density. So again, this is probably relevant in America because you do have areas of high altitude. If you do define something above sea level, then the air density could go up or down. That air density will be part of the fan calculation and the motor will be sized based on that particular density that you've asked for. So I'm going to leave this as default for the minute, but this does have an impact on the selection. So if you're operating somewhere that's hilly, or I always use an example of Peru because that's a very hilly country, then you might be operating several thousand feet above sea level. And in case that happens, then obviously the air density will be less and you'd have less power requirement. Installation. This is basically how the fan is to be installed in the ductwork. So this is where you can define whether it's a ducted inlet, ducted outlet fan, or whether you have an open inlet or open outlet. This does change the performance, and it also changes the noise based on the open ends. And over on the right hand side, you can also choose how the air passes over the product, what we call Form A or Form B, whether the air passes over the impeller first or whether the air passes over the motor first. Just for your knowledge, the default is B, which is the quietest way of working. If you did choose A, it puts about 3 dB on the noise. The only difference really is to do with access in terms of service and maintenance, whether you want one or the other. The default there is normally B. Accessories, which we now will change. So these are the default accessories that we can have for this particular product. So other than the speed control, which I've added, I've not chosen anything else at the moment. So what I can do here is basically define on this list of accessories what I want. And you can see here we've got a few. And I can define whether this accessory is on the inlet or the outlet of the product. Now, at the moment, this doesn't do anything other than show you visually where it sits. But later on, we're going to change the program to allow a calculation to show you a cause and effect of an accessory on either the inlet or the outlet. So for the minute, it's just a visual representation, but later on, this will actually have an effect on the actual selection that's made. So what I can basically do is I can define whether I want something on the inlet or the outlet. And you can see here graphically, it's showing that particular item. Some of these accessories have losses, we call a K factor. So this accessory here has got a 0.5 K factor. Depending what the accessory is, the loss can change based on the amount of obstruction it causes to the actual airflow. Now, I'm going to be lazy here. I'm not going to go through and choose what I want. I'm going to use this option here called recommended. So if I choose this red option called recommended, it will pre-tick for me what we would normally offer for an axial fan. Now, there's one thing in here which you'll need to do. You can see here on the recommended list, we have our normal flanges and flexes and feet. What we don't have at the moment is any form of anti-vibration mountings. That's purely because at the moment, the default in the program is rubber AVs. And at the moment, you're looking at using spring AVs. So when you use this option, recommended, you will need to define some sort of anti-vibration mounting to isolate it from the base that it's going to be fastened to. So I'm going to use spring here. You can see here it's put spring in. And if I then reselect that fan, stop that. If you're doing basically a selection across all products, it will find a lot of results. So that little stop option just allows you to stop the process there and then. The plus symbol now will have more than just the inverter in it. It's now got all the other accessories that I also chose. So you've got the spring AVs here, the fleet effects, and the matching flanges, and also the prices. The prices, by the way, are a high list price. So if you're seeing values that look big, don't worry. They are intended to be a very high list price. But the plus symbol you can see here now has got more than one accessory. So I'm now going to add another fan to this project before we carry on, and I'm going to just choose a random fan. I'm going to choose this one here, add that to the project. So it's gone underneath, so any new item goes at the bottom. It's called fan 1 again, because that's what I had in there. Again, as you saw, I could right click this and rename it. But the difference here now is fan 1 has now got this plus symbol, which is the same as the plus symbol you see in the grid. So in the project, you can now also see the accessories that we've added that are underneath this particular fan. So it's just a visual way of giving you a reference of what you've actually selected. Now, in the project, you have some options at the top here. Now, I've just been basically adding things to this, but I've not actually saved it yet. So all these options I have in my project, they're saved in the session that I'm working to, but they're not actually saved on the server. So I would recommend that as you're going through and using the program, that you do regularly actually make a save to actually commit what you've selected to the actual server. So now that's actually saved in the cloud, so I can then go back and load it in. As long as you don't navigate away from the program, anything you add to the project is always there. But as soon as you leave, if you haven't saved, you will lose what you've just put in. So I would strongly recommend as you're going through to regularly press the save button. You will see that in a minute, as I'm bound to forget as I do the presentation. It will pop up a warning if I do that. So it's somewhat your fault if you do it and don't save, because it is warning you. It's a bit like, are you sure you want to save if you're using like an Excel document? It gives you a prompt, but then it's your choice whether you save it or not. This does the same. I personally would recommend, though, as you're going through regularly, just keep pressing the save option. In the project, we also have some other options, which again we'll come back to more in detail in a minute, but we can also look at the printing of a project. We can open projects, and we can also change the project details. So when I created this, I called this USA Tuesday. If I go to this briefcase here, you can see the pop-up. I can actually rename the project and actually fill in some of the details that I missed off. I can give it a quote reference, for example, if I'm producing a quotation. Press save, and then that will update that particular project. Okay, so I'm jumping around a bit here, but going back to the options. So the last two, underneath accessories, we have product actual fans. Now, in this section here, I'm only looking at JM Aerofoil USA, but I can pick more than one product. So when I make my volume and pressure selection here, if I picked other product lines, I can then also make them part of the selection and have them come out in the grid, and then can make comparisons and compare. So because I went in from the top here and I chose just this product, that's why only this one is picked. But I could, if I wanted to, add more. And then lastly, at the bottom, filters and constraints. This allows you to apply some limits to the selections that you're making. So if, for example, you knew that you're working with a design where you wanted a maximum sound value, or you had certain speed restrictions, or even size restrictions, this allows you to define these, and it allows the grid then of results to be filtered to restrict those options from being displayed. It's quite handy if you're doing a select all option for all products, because you can sometimes find 100 or more results. So if you know that you have certain limits, defining some of these here is quite useful to give you a smaller list of results to assess. Okay, so going back to the results grid. So what we've done here basically is choose one product. We've put some performance against it. We've made some selections. We've got a grid. We've looked at some of the options for this particular product. But we've only at the moment looked at one particular product line. We have others that are currently in our portfolio in terms of our product lines and applications. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a quick look at some of the other products that we have. So I'm going to go back now to the select products option at the top. And let's have a look at garage fans, completely different product line. So there's two garage fans that we offer, slimline and induction. Again, I can select all if I don't know what I want. Or, and I'm going to go straight in here, I'm going to look at just this slimline product. So let's go and have a look at slimline. Now, when I've gone in here, this looks completely different. The screen looks completely different. But if you look at it closely, it's not. So the project's still on the left-hand side, still here. But we've got different options here because this is a product line that it doesn't have many options. It has more features. So there's no need to have separate areas for the options and separate areas for the results grid. We basically show everything on one page. So the left-hand side here, we have some filters. Underneath, we have a few options. And basically on the right-hand side, we have one screen that allows you to define the various different configuration types that we currently offer. So for this particular example, I'm going to look at just showing me the 355 car park fan, garage fan. So this is our 355 garage fan. There's only one of them for this particular size and type. So in the results grid, I've just got one. I can press it like we saw in the previous grid. We've got the same options at the top, summary page, charts, product dimensions. But this is now a completely different product and it shows you different information. So here now you see we've got a flow chart. We haven't got a fan chart anymore. We have some different dimensions, obviously. This is a different style of product. Same thing as before, sound data, commercial data. And for this product, slightly different calculations in terms of the fan's performance. But the way that the program works, it's the same. You're filling in some filters and constraints. You're finding something. If I wanted this, again, I can add that to a project. And then if I just expand that out, this will then get added to the project and will appear underneath. Now, while we're in here, I just need to explain how the program works in terms of its logic. It actually sits on a configuration engine. So whenever you choose an option, it's basically making an assessment to see whether what you're asking for is actually valid. And this is done for a reason of trying to prevent you picking combinations that are not appropriate or even not possible. So you can see here in this screen, we have on the right hand side here some characteristics of this particular car park fan. You probably can't read this on the presentation, but there's one here called inlet deflector, which is grayed out. But if I wanted an inlet deflector, I don't know why I can't have it. I want it, but I don't know why I can't have it. So I'm going to press this. It's going to say, oh, we've got some conflicts, but I want this. So I'm going to change this, change to an inlet deflector. You can see the image has changed, so it's now showing me what I'm after. And the screen very quickly flashed and some things changed. Now, I know what's changed because I've done this as a presentation, but what it's done is basically said, if you want this option, you can't have unidirectional, which is what we were on before. It's automatically chosen for us reversible because this combination is only suitable in a reversible format. And it doesn't matter where you are in the program, this is what the program's doing all the time. It's performing these tests to make sure that what you're picking is actually possible to prevent you finding the dreaded no results found. So it's trying to prevent you finding solutions that are not possible. So it's just something to be aware that when you choose something, if you see that box pop up where it says conflict, it is going to change things. But it's changing things to give you the option that you've asked for. So in this case here, you saw it took out unidirectional. If I then reselect this, this is then an RDD, which is a reversible fan, whereas before it was a different product type because it was only unidirectional. It was UDD. So let's just add that to a project just so we can build up our shopping list. Add that to project. I didn't reference it here, so again, I can mistakenly go back, right click, press rename, call that I know what it is, garage fan, update project. It's now called a garage fan. And this is really the process of how you use the program. You're using the different screens that we have to find and configure products, review the product, and then basically add it to a shopping basket, a project tree as we call it, save it, so you can then basically keep it for future use. So that was garage fans. Let's have a quick look at what else we've got in here. So we've also got things like roof fans. Let's have a look at roof fans. Here we go. I didn't save my project. So this is basically saying, oh, be careful. If you leave, you might lose your data. Now, I know I'm not going to lose my data because I'm still in the website. But if you were to navigate to, I don't know, google.com or something as a search, then you've left the website, then you would lose what you've done. So I'd have lost my garage fan because I hadn't saved that at that point. So that's the box that appears that it warns you that at that point you're going to lose what you've done if you've not saved. So this is a roof unit. So again, I'm not going to go too much into this. So what's a typical roof unit? Say something like 3001 or something like that. 1001. Sorry, over optimistic in terms of the product's performance. So a roof unit, here we've got again some results. It's a completely different product, but like the car park fan screen you saw, it's the same concept. You have some options. This one does have a few options you can choose. You have some characteristics that you can choose in terms of is it horizontal, vertical, and certain other performance characteristics in relation to the electrical details. Underneath then, when you make a selection, you have the results. And again, like the car park fan, I can choose one. I can add that to a project. So now we have a roof unit. Again, if I was upholding my earlier principle, I'd have given that a reference and that would have been there for me. Again, I can right click, I can rename, call that roof, just so we know what we've got. Great. And lastly, if I look at plate fans, just to show the difference again, look at all again, leave because we saved it. Different screen again, but the same concept. You have your volume and pressure. So plate fan is going to be something like 2001. I think. Yeah, there's a couple. Again, same as before, you can give it a reference, choose the fan you want. If we look at the technical charts and summary pages, they're different again, but they're all in the same style and the same sort of format. And again, if I wanted that particular one, I can add that to the project and it will appear at the bottom. So basically, this is the real crux of how the program works. You're basically using these groups, you're using the options, you're using the filters to locate and find these particular products. So I'm just going to save what I've done now so I don't get that annoying box keep appearing. Okay, so I've saved that now, so that prompt's not going to keep coming up. So what we've done now is we've used the selection area to pick 3 or 4 different product types. We've got this project, which I keep referring to, and we've got some of the options in the project, which I'm now going to show you. So across the top here, you have a hamburger menu, and you actually have these icons. I've been showing you this project using this top option where you can expand and collapse it. But if you look underneath, there's also this option, which is basically a full view of the project. So this is basically showing you all the columns and information for the items that we have selected. It's also showing you up here a bit more information. So it's showing you a total for the project. It's also showing you a few more icons. So let's just look at the ones that are obviously different. So that's the save, that's the print. This one was different. That wasn't there before, which is price. Open, which is opening a new project, and project we've seen. I can also create a new one. This is different now. I've got this option, which is price. So you can see here all the values that I've been selecting have gone in automatically based on my price list here, which is my list price global USA. But I can actually choose to update these prices, bearing in mind that I might be looking at a project that was selected maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And then basically updating the prices will refresh all the values on today's value. Or I can actually edit the prices and modify things. So my account has got the privilege to go up and down on prices. So if I go into edit, you can see here we've got everything ticked by default. So I could say, for example, uplift my entire project by 10%, for example. So I could choose to uplift by 10%. I can calculate that. It works out the maths. If I apply it, then all the values get raised by 10%. They've gone green, which you probably can't see too clearly on the presentation. But because the value's gone up, they've gone green. So what you can basically do in the project is allow the values to be manipulated up or down. Down is a privilege, by the way. Not every person can do that. So if you're somebody who can offer discounts, we can set your account up to go backwards. If you do go backwards, the number will go red to show that it's gone down. So green is up, black is the default price, and then red is down. The other thing you've got in here as well is this hamburger menu, which I've not even touched yet. So in the project, this is the same view that you see in the collapsed view, but it's just a bit easier to see it in this extended view. You can do different things with the project. Some of these are the same as the icons. So you can see here we've got the ability to open, save, close, print. You can also do things like export. So if you're working with a particularly large project, you sometimes might need to do a technical schedule. So what you can do is export everything you have here into Excel. So if I just show you that, let's see what it looks like. I can go export. And what you can do here is choose the columns you want to export just by dragging into here the ones you don't want. And you can also move their position. So you can change the way they come out. When you're happy with something, you can save it. So that keeps that view next time round you want to do an export. So then what you can do is export it into CSV. You get a download. If I load that up into Excel, what you've then got basically is an export from the program in Excel in the columns that I've chosen. This is very useful if you're doing technical schedules or submittals, because it gives you a way of summarizing it in a grid format in an offline tool like Excel. We use this quite a lot for doing tender approvals and technical summaries. Let's not save all that. So that's basically under the hamburger menu. You can use this export option to extract the data. Now, projects, as I said, are saved in the cloud. So it's not uncommon that you have local areas of files that you work with on projects on your network or local PC or hard drive. So because the project's in the cloud, the project is not on your PC. It's always out there somewhere. But what you can do is you can actually create a shortcut to the project that you can copy to your hard drive or network and have it with the other files that you have for your project. And that's basically either a URL or a zip file which contains the URL. And that's just basically a shortcut. So if you pressed it as a file, it will automatically load up fansector.wazevent.com, and it will try and load the project for you that represents that shortcut. We use that quite a lot in the UK because we have a global file area where we save all of the commercial information relating to quotations. So we have the inquiry, technical schedules, and this project link to get back to the project. So when you're looking at the files on the network, you can see the supporting data and also a link to the project itself. You won't need any of these. The last ones here, though, are relevant. So the project is in the cloud. What you can do is actually share the project. You can share it with multiple people. And when you share a project, you are both working on the same thing at the same time. So that's quite useful, that if you're working with something that you need some support and advice on and want to, for example, get David Downs involved, you could share this with David or one of the other sales team in the Woods USA environment, and then basically they can see and work on the same project as you. So it's a way of collaboratively working, and basically the way it works is you have share. You can specify who you want to share it with, david.downs@flatgroup.com. You can give a reason why, I am stuck, whatever it might be. And then if you tick this box here, that will notify David that he's got this project that's been shared with him. He can load it up and he can see what you've done, and he can offer some support and help. I apologize, David, for picking you on that example, but that just allows people to sort of share it with other people. You can also share it with your own team. It's not just anybody in the Woods Air Movement group. And lastly, at the bottom, you can copy and paste selections from a project. So if you want to move products from one project to another project, you can copy them, open up another project, and then paste them into that project. So it's not quite the Control-C, Control-V you can do in Windows, but it's similar. You basically define what you want to copy and then where you want to paste it. So that's basically all under this hamburger menu in the top here. So I'm just going to minimize that all back. So while we're in projects, a couple of things to mention before I finish on direct mode and your account settings. We haven't looked at the moment anything to do with the projects that have been saved. I've been pressing that save button and it's been going to the cloud, but where's it going? So if I look at my projects that I currently leave because I didn't save it. What we currently have here, these are all the projects that I've created. Now, most of these are demos, so they're rubbish. But what you can see here is the project. You can also see here, some of these have been shared. So I can see here that these projects have been shared with these different people. I created it, but I've chosen to share it with somebody else. But in here is the way that you would then get back to your saved projects so you can load and work on them. If I highlight one, you can see here, you have this hamburger menu. By the way, in here, double click does work as well. I've not shown that, but in the results grid and here, if you double click something, it's the same as opening. I tend to do the demonstrations using the menus, but you can double click in different places. In here, you have some options for this project. So I can open it. I can share it again here. I have to share it when it's open. I can share it from here. I can delete it. And what you can do here basically is then open that project up if it's pre-saved and then work on it and add to it. And I can also, as I said before here, share it as well. So the way to load a project is to select it and then basically go to the menu here to load it back in. You'll also have the ability to be a member of a team. Now, we have to set this up. So if you're a larger organization where you have multiple salespeople and you want to collaboratively work and see each other's projects that you've saved, you can actually be part of a team. So again, if you want to do that, I'll suggest that you liaise through Dan and David and other members of the Woods Air Movement group. They can advise us then what teams need to be set up, and then we can create that for your account. So then we can give you the ability to see other people's saved projects. By default, you only see your own. So your team will be blank by default. But as I said, if you're an organization that has a few engineers, we can set that up for you. You can also see in here a filter to see which projects have been shared with you. And also you can show everything together. So that's shared projects, team projects, and also your own projects. So it's just a filter. Again, the project works the same way as the results grid. You can filter this, you can order things. You can also type in, if I type in USA, for example, it very quickly filters the list of projects based on the criteria that you've entered. So you can look for something that's been created by somebody, shared with somebody, or entered or worked on by a particular date range. And again, if I press this, it does it alphabetically, smallest, biggest, biggest, smallest. It works the same way as the results grid. Okay, so if I go back to the home page, so we looked at the home page, we've looked at selected products. We have this project that we've been messing around with and adding things to. What we haven't looked at all yet is the other mode that I mentioned to actually choose product, which is what we call direct mode or configure mode. So just to show you the difference, if I just go into that very quickly, it's a completely different way of working and finding product. Selection mode is a way of listing things that can meet a certain criteria. Direct mode or configuration mode is something that you have to know roughly what you want. And it's a way of then exploring the performance and the capability of a product. So it's split in two parts. So the left-hand side works the same way as the selection mode. You have these options and you have this ability to apply performance. But the whole way that direct mode works is basically applying filters to various different configuration states. So at the moment, we're looking at a particular product line. I've gone here to the default, which is currently JMV, but it could be any product, doesn't matter. And what you have here, these properties here in the middle are defining what I'm currently looking at down here. But this chart here is dynamic. So at the moment, there's nothing on it because I've got no duty selected. If I click the chart just by left clicking with the mouse, I can actually put a duty point on, and up here you can see it's worked out performance at that particular point. And I can click around on here. It's doing different things. So what it's doing, it's basically saying for this particular fan, in this case, I'm looking here at a 31. For these particular performance characteristics, I'm looking at a certain size and a certain hub, certain number of blades, certain speed. This is the performance of the fan. And for this fan, I can actually fit any of these motors inside it. This is all the different options that we can actually offer. And what the chart is showing for this particular motor, which is this top one here that I've got picked, you can see I've got this min and max highlighted. This is the capability of the motor in terms of the pitch angles that can be driven by that motor power. You can see here, if I go above this grey line, this motor here, which is 0.54 horsepower, won't be there anymore because it's now not big enough. I get a bigger motor. 9.4, for example. You can see here, this is now driving up to this angle. So this is a way for you to configure or tailor a particular fan to give you the performance. So you can see what the fan is capable of doing, but also you can see different options that you can put inside the fan, different motors, different combinations. But it requires some degree of product knowledge because you need to know what size of fan you want in the first place, what characteristic. So selection mode does this for you. Direct mode allows you to tailor something that you know already exists or you know that you want. So direct mode is quite useful if you're doing a replacement, for example, of a fan that's already on site. You're matching maybe a competitor's fan where you know the size or certain characteristics. Or you're looking at a fan that we offered in the past that is of one of our own fans where you know the model code. You can basically configure the model code to get back to the fan's performance based on just these properties here. But once you've chosen something, and just say, for example, this is the one that I want, it works the same way as the selection mode. I have these options at the top. I can show the summary, the chart, the dimensions, the accessories, and I can add it to a project. So the program works the same way. It's just a different way of finding the particular product. You're configuring it rather than selecting and finding from a list of results. So I think to start with, those of you who are not familiar with the products probably won't use this mode. But over time, with more experience and more exposure to the products in the American market, you'll find this mode will become more commonly used. Okay, and lastly, I'd like to end in some of the settings. So when I was looking at this mode, we go back to selection mode. I mentioned that my results grid, if I look at my grid, which is currently empty, I had lots of columns in here and they're in a bit of a weird order. So what you can do is you can use some program settings or account settings to just influence how the program is presenting some of the data. So if I go to my account, you can see at the top here, I'm on Paul Rose, this is my account. And I go to my program settings. User profile, by the way, is just information about yourself. That's where you are, your name, etc. Program settings are options for the actual program itself. So if I go into the program settings, it's a bit of a messy screen, to be honest, but what you have here is a way of defining some of your default values. So you can see here, I've chosen for this demonstration and presentation to put all my units into American. So if you didn't want American units, say, for example, you wanted thrust to be in newtons, not pounds per foot, I could change that, save it using this option here. So next time round, I do a product that deals in thrust, which is a garage fan or maybe a tunnel fan. That unit will be a Newton. Again, if I could change any of these, I could show kilowatts if I wanted to. So anything that you want to change, you can change it to default. I've chosen in mine to put everything into Imperial. Again, I can choose here which printout pages I want. Do I want to show certain things on the printouts? And on the right-hand side here, I can choose certain characteristics in terms of some of the options. So you can see here, I'm currently defaulting to English USA, 60 Hertz, obviously, for the electrical details. I could also specify in here some different criteria. I could change my sound distance, for example, which will change the calculation of the sound figures based on the inlet and outlet spectrums. And at the top here, which is not overly clear, we have the ability to define the columns that appear in my grid. Now, if I edit this using this orange button here, I've chose to exclude some columns, and I can also then use, very similar to the export option in project, I can use this to basically reorder things. So I can just basically drag things around, change the sequence. I could remove things by dragging them at the top here. If I didn't want sound, for example, I could remove it. And then when I'm happy with what I've done, I can press done, press save, and that'll be saved. So next time round I use the program, my grid will change and I'll view the columns that I've chosen to define here. So that's just a way of loosely changing the way the program presents and displays the data. We will be adding more in here later on, by the way. So there are other things that we want to have defaultable, which are currently not. So what you will find over time, there'll be more and more of these panels appear where you can define different program characteristics as a default. And in terms of using the program, that's really it. You've got the two different modes. You've got the project, where you can see you can interact with some of the items. Oh, I didn't mention, by the way, you can also move these around. If you right click, you can move up, move down. So if you wanted to actually change the sequence and say, for example, with the garage fan at the top, you can reorder this. That's relevant for the printouts, because if I did a printout, it prints in the sequence that the fans are listed in the project. So if you're doing a technical submittal or a schedule, you might want to have them in an order that's in line with the consultant or the specifier's original requirements list. I can also in here delete things if I want to get rid of stuff. So this right-click menu allows you to alter some of the characteristics of the fan in the project. So that's the project. And at the end there, I just showed you the user settings. And that's really the program. It's a matter of finding product by performance or configuring the product, choosing the options, finding the fan that you want, saving it into a project, which is then stored under a project link in the top menu. So that's all I was going to try and show.